So right off the bat, as far as the MCU goes, I feel like I have a pretty unique perspective because I'm not the biggest fan, but I have liked a lot of what they've done recently. But I do also have some gaps in what I've seen because I kind of picked and chose until like 2017, but I also don't really go to the theaters. So I haven't seen every film, and there are some that are out on DVD that I've just been slacking on. For example, I haven't seen the Ant-Man movies because they don't seem very interesting to me. For a long time I didn't see Winter Soldier because I didn't really like the first Avenger at all, but I did enjoy Winter Soldier quite a bit. I haven't seen Captain Marvel yet. I haven't seen Endgame. I'm not looking too forward to seeing Endgame because I didn't really like Infinity War. I thought it had some really good stuff and some really good humor, and it looked really good, but Thanos was terrible, poorly written, didn't make any sense. He wasn't very interesting to watch, despite the fact that it seemed like he could and would be. And I'm probably 50-50 as far as liking or not really caring for the MCU movies I have seen. But I saw Civil War in early 2017, thought it was really good, and then in 2017, the 3 best movies in the MCU, in my opinion, came out. Guardians 2, Thor Ragnarok, and Spider-Man Homecoming. And that got me really excited for the future of the MCU. Then Infinity War wasn't very good. I haven't seen Far From Home yet because it's still in theaters. I have really complicated feelings about the MCU. I care about it. I'm glad it's succeeding. I'm hyped for some of the stuff that was announced and think it will probably be really good. I think there are probably more things I'm excited for in this next phase than there have been in previous phases. Though, to be fair, this is the first phase they've had where I liked a decent amount of the movies that had come before it and therefore had reason to be excited. To be clear though, I am a very big fan of comics. I'm not the most knowledgeable. I haven't really been much into actually reading comics until the last few years. So there are a lot of things I haven't gotten to. And when it comes to things I'm into, I go through phases of, so I have knowledge, I have read a decent amount of comics, I care a lot about comics, I have a lot of Marvel comics I really like, but I'm not coming from a perspective of a lifelong obsessed fan who knows everything. So I'm kind of in between as far as both the MCU and as being a comic fan as far as like the severe spectrums go. So the MCU Phase 4. I'm just going to go in order by the timeline thing they showed at Comic-Con for Phase 4 because I don't have any other clear method in my brain of organizing their importance and how I should talk about them. So I'm just going to go with the simple, lame way. Black Widow, right off the bat, not too excited. I think Scarlett Johansson is very good in the role. I think the writing has been very weak around her. She was pretty solid in Winter Soldier, but basically everything else I've seen her in has been just kinda a lame straight man to a lot of the better and more interesting characters around her, which can be very good, but has to be written with a specific amount of quality, and I just don't think it's been there for her. It almost feels like she's an afterthought to a lot of writers, despite being part of the main cast, so I'm not super excited about her movie. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I'm actually pretty excited about, because I think the Falcon was pretty good in Winter Soldier. The Winter Soldier himself, I don't really care for, but he was okay in Civil War from what I saw, and they could have a really interesting dynamic. And the Falcon is one of my favorite characters in recent comics, so I'm excited to see him get more of a starring role, and I think something more episodic really fits both characters really well, and it just sounds like it'll be a good time. The Eternals, which before looking at this timeline I thought was kicking it off, though I guess Black Widow will probably be more of an Ant-Man type side story that doesn't matter all that much, but just like reintroduces you to the world and gets you back in the mood for Marvel. But the Eternals, this might be a bit of a recurring thing because these aren't as well known characters. The Eternals I've known about for a while. I kind of know what they're about. I've never actually read any of the comics with them in it, or if I did, they were such a minor role or such a side thing that I don't remember them being in it at all. So I can't really speak to any excitement about seeing the characters adapted, at least not yet, though I do plan on reading either the original Kirby run or the Gaiman run, but they sound really interesting. Was kind of pushed by Guardians of the Galaxy and Infinity War and Endgame. I assume Endgame, which will open the door for the two announced but not shown things that we'll be talking about at the end of this video, because I feel like a lot of people don't realize, but they love space with those two teams that they recently acquired in the comics. Shang-Chi, I heard of him a couple times. I don't really know anything about Shang-Chi, but doing a little research, it sounds really interesting. I really want to read Shang-Chi, and the movie sounds like it could be a lot of fun. And given the next movie coming after Shang-Chi, it could be a really cool lead-in. WandaVision is a show, I guess, following Wanda Maximoff and Vision just doing stuff. I don't really have much information about it, unfortunately, but apparently it takes place after the events of Endgame, so that's interesting. My guess would be it will just explore the world and the universe immediately after the events of Endgame, so that could be interesting, but I'm not too excited about it. I think they're two very interesting characters that again haven't been written all that well, much like Natasha, but better than her at least, so I think there's more promise for that. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. From reports, it seems like they're going in a horror direction with this, which I'm personally not a big fan of horror, so I'm a little worried, despite the fact that the name alone sounds like it would be the perfect Doctor Strange movie. It kind of makes me feel like it could have vibes to the Last Days of Magic storyline that somewhat recently happened in the comics, though likely more off the walls crazy. I enjoyed the first Doctor Strange movie at times, but thought it was fairly dull for a lot of it, though I really liked the writing and delivery around Strange himself. So if it's just him having crazy adventures, it could be really good. Loki, as everyone has already pointed out, weird MS Paint logoed solo series sounds really cool. I feel like I'm not nearly as excited about it as a lot of people are, despite the fact I do really like Tom Hiddleston's Loki, and it's really cool that they got him to reprise the role for a full-on series. Will be taking place immediately after the last time we see him in Endgame, and I do kind of know what happens to him in that movie, so I can kind of speak on that. It sounds like kind of what I said Multiverse of Madness could be, which could just be a fun, well-written character having wacky adventures, and could be a lot of fun. Probably won't be as potentially dark as Multiverse of Madness will be, which I'm totally cool with. And this is the thing I think has the most potential of anything here, even the last thing, which is what if the animated MCU series. Because for those who don't know, you could probably figure it out anyway, but for those who don't know, What If is basically a comic series that just creates what if scenarios. Like one of the most famous ones, which is also really good, was in, I believe, the 70s, it may have been early 80s, where Peter Parker's Spider-Man joins the Fantastic Four. It becomes the Fantastic Five. Peter wears this like pajama faux Fantastic Four suit that doesn't fit him properly, and a bag over his head to hide his identity, and it's pretty fun. And I think he actually rejoins the team later on and gets like a really awesome suit that's probably his best suit, and they play off each other really well. And speaking of that, I can't wait to see, hopefully, Peter play off the Fantastic Four on the big screen. You can just do almost anything with it because they're Elseworlds tales, they don't really happen, they're not canon. The whole idea is that you just like, what if? Well, fucking, I can't think of anything. Well, if I can't think of anything, what then? I have nothing to say. Well, if like Doctor Doom got his hand on Tony Stark's technology, that actually happens in a comic series that came out a couple years ago that's really good. It actually may have been last year, I'm not sure. It's called Infamous Iron Man, and it's really good. You should read it. But the idea is whatever you want can happen in this series, so it could be a lot of fun, especially if they're willing to introduce characters that aren't in the MCU and utilize them, even if they don't plan on bringing them into the MCU. There are limitless possibilities with this, but I also feel like the Marvel shows they've had since Disney took over have been good, but not anything special, especially not the Spider-Man series they recently ran, which might still be going. I don't know. I don't care. Hawkeye could be cool, kind of like, I feel like it'd be kind of similar to a Black Widow series would be. It's kind of more like a Mission Impossible type spy show, which could be really fun, but also could be really dull. I don't know. Everyone's favorite / least favorite movie announced here, Thor: Love and Thunder, which I'm pretty excited about. Again, I feel like I'm not as excited or unexcited as a lot of people. I think it could be absolutely fantastic, especially with Taika Waititi returning to direct it, and Jane Foster becoming Thor like she does in the comics. But it'll depend a lot on how they work around that to make it happen, whether the story itself will be satisfying or not. I don't have any problem, obviously, with this happening, because I'm not terrible. But they've also been very inconsistent with writing Jane Foster in general, which, again, she has a better team around this movie than I think there ever has been. So Natalie Portman could do absolutely great in this role, but I am a little hesitant and worried about it because of the things I said previously. It wasn't a good Thor movie until Taika Waititi did Ragnarok, and Jane Foster, I don't think she even shows up in the movie. If she does, it's like a 5-second cameo. So we have yet to see how she's written in the modern MCU, but I do have high hopes for this. And anyone listening to this who has not done so already, unless you need it to be fun and fluffy, kind of like Ragnarok was, if you haven't read Thor comics, I would strongly urge you to read Jason Aaron's Thor comics, whichever ones, because his initial Thor God of Thunder run is fantastic, and the first 2 volumes are 2 of my favorite volumes and one of my favorite storylines ever in comics, and pretty much everything he's done with Thor has been great. And his Mighty Thor run with Jane Foster is what this is based on. And technically the last thing they announced, but not a thing in Phase 4, so me saying Love and Thunder was kind of the last thing makes sense because it's the last thing in the Phase 4, but not the last thing they showed and announced, which is Blade, which I'm very excited about. I loved the Blade movies when I was a kid. I still very much like them, though I haven't read much of the Blade comics, but I think they visually got like the perfect Blade, and I'm very excited about this movie, and I think it's going to be great. And that's all the information I have to go on. So I'll move on to the 2 things they hinted at, which are Fantastic Four and quote-unquote mutants, which Kevin Feige clarified did refer to the X-Men and the things around them. He was just using it as more of a broad term, which I assume suggests that they plan on doing more than just the X-Men as far as mutant-related movies, which is a good thing, because some of the best X-Men stuff, like early X-Factor and most of the original New Mutants run, is some of the best stuff they've done with mutants. And the Fantastic Four is very underrated because they've never had a decent movie. They've always been shown to be either terrible in their movie adaptations or like weird Silver Age throwbacks that don't work in modern times, which is definitely not the case considering some of the recent Fantastic Four runs have been some of the best of their entire history in comics. The ones that I would suggest the most are the current Dan Slott run and the Jonathan Hickman run. But yeah, the Fantastic Four are really great, and I really look forward to seeing a proper adaptation. I really look forward to seeing probably my favorite Marvel Comics villain, which is Doctor Doom, because he's absolutely amazing in everything he does, unless like a bad writer is on the book, in which case obviously everyone kind of sucks. But a proper Doctor Doom, as great as the Fantastic Four are, a proper Doctor Doom is like the thing I'm most excited about as far as the Fantastic Four. And of course, the complete breaking of the shell around space in the MCU. Because if there's one thing that has to happen basically with the Fantastic Four is space, because that's where they spend like most of their time. And the X-Men is probably my favorite comic property, so obviously I'm very excited to see that. And it's been a while since we've had a decent X-Men movie too. Like, some of them actually have been decent, but that's like the threshold they've hit is decent in the last like decade and a half. So I'm really excited to see them return. I'm really excited to see characters like, hopefully, Magic, Kitty Pryde, Colossus. Colossus has actually been really good in the Deadpool movies, and I really hope they can just carry that Colossus over, because he's basically perfect. And hopefully see a decent Iceman and a decent Cyclops. And honestly, I'm down for a new Wolverine. Hugh Jackman's been doing it for so long. I doubt he can do it a whole lot longer. And I don't know, just I'd like to see a fresh take on Wolverine that isn't quite so meme Wolverine, as opposed to like the actual depth the character has, Logan aside. So yeah, I'm really excited for a lot of stuff coming out. I'm really on the fence about some stuff coming out, but pretty much all of it has big potential in my opinion. And I hope Phase 5 opens up with either the Fantastic Four or the X-Men. I honestly expect it to open up with the Fantastic Four.